Welcome one and all to episode 8 in the second series of the Celtic Whiskey Pod with me, your host, Al Higgins. Now, in the last 20 years, whiskey has gone from being distilled in just a handful of countries to becoming a truly global product. If you look at Europe now as an example, there are whiskey distilleries in pretty much every country. Only a month ago I was in Greece and I saw a large billboard advertising a single malt that was distilled in Romania. Unfortunately, I didn't get to try it, but I'm sure it was well made and tasted good. We are now at the stage where each country has to make a case for itself and to seek ways to promote their whiskey on the world stage. However, some countries are so big and so populated that it's perfectly feasible for them to sell all the whiskey without having to export. India has such a large demand for whiskey that in 2020, the top 4 best-selling brands in the world were Indian whiskies, made just for the domestic market. It's an insane fact to consider that 4 brands that are not sold in Europe, America or many other markets all outsold whiskies such as Johnnie Walker, Jameson or Jack Daniels. Further down the list of the top 25 selling whiskies included many other brands also made for sale in India. But what is most interesting is that most Indian whiskies are an alcohol romantically named IMFL. This stands for Indian Made Foreign Liquor, essentially Indian spirits that are made in homage to foreign whiskies, rums and gins, etc. These can be made from a mixture of ingredients and often include molasses, and they are distilled to become highly rectified neutral alcohol before being flavoured, coloured or aged. Despite the prevalence of IMFL and the huge domestic market, there are of course high quality whiskies being made for export. Amrut Distillery has been a trailblazer for years, but more recently, Paul John Single Malt Whisky has been creating some exceptional whiskies and winning literally hundreds of awards for them. So when I heard Michael D'Souza, the head distiller from Paul John, was visiting Ireland, I naturally jumped at the chance to interview him for the Celtic Whiskey Pod. The story of Paul John Distillery is quite remarkable. The quality and diversity amongst their range is hugely impressive. All of this despite none of their whiskies carrying age statements. The hot and humid climate means that the casks reach maturity approximately 4 times faster than those in Western Europe, so in effect age statements become far less relevant. The whiskies are definitely worth trying, but don't just take my word for it. Have a listen right now to see what Michael D'Souza has to say.
You're listening to the Celtic Whiskey Pod, the home of unchill-filtered conversation.
So welcome to the Celtic Whiskey Pod, Michael D'Souza from Paul John Distillery. First of all, thank you for coming to Ireland and visiting us in Dublin. It's a great pleasure to have someone from a distillery so far away across the globe coming to see us. We're here in the Drury Buildings in Dublin because we're doing a tasting tonight. And what better opportunity to talk to you and find out the whole history and story behind this incredible distillery. So, first of all, welcome.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure.
And can you tell us about Paul John as a whiskey and a company and how it was formatted, how it came about?
Okay. The company was established by Mr. Paul P. John in 1992. Today, John Distilleries has grown as one of the leading alcohol manufacturers in India, producing close to 18 million cases annually.
Wow.
Until 2006, we were predominantly producing blended whiskies. Mm-hmm. In India, we have something called IMFL.
I heard about that.
That is called as Indian Made Foreign Liquor.
Yeah.
So for this, we generally use extra neutral alcohol made out of either molasses or grain.
Yeah.
It's a seasonal. Whenever you have sugarcane crushing, you get more molasses-based alcohol.
Okay.
Otherwise, it is made out of grain. So out of this, you can produce, so-called whiskey, brandy, rum, gin, or whatever it is. You're allowed to add color and flavors. So this does not come under any regulations. But we have something called proper whiskey, wherein we have to meet all the international regulations.
Yeah.
So until 2006, Mr. Paul John, he was into blended whiskies, and we are India's 4th largest. and one of our flagship sells close to 1.5 million cases every month.
Wow.
And this is one of the top 5 alcobave product in the world.
Yeah.
In terms of volumes. In 2006, he decided to set up his distillery on the western coast of India, place called Goa. The reason he chose Goa because, as you know, to produce quality liquid, you need quality water.
Okay.
So Goa is known for quality water.
Right.
So he decided to set up his distillery in Goa. And also Goa has its own history. Goa was a Portuguese colony and it's a touristic destination. You have your own story to tell.
Yeah, I think if anyone goes to visit India, they always
absolutely
come back raving about Goa and the beach and the food and everything. Yeah.
Correct. So, he chose me to set up the entire distillery operations, so from setting up the distillery to the warehouses, and ultimately making whiskey.
Yeah.
It took two long years for him to complete the entire state-of-art distillery, including a couple of warehouses.
Well, that's quite quick, really, though, isn't it?
Yes, 2 years. In India, we have a lot of manpower.
Yeah.
So in 2009, we started our first distillation. Paul John is made out of 100% Indian grain.
Yeah.
So we started sourcing our grain from Rajasthan, and we started distilling our single malt. Again, when as I said, we have to follow the international regulations. To be called as a single malt, the liquid has to be matured for minimum of 3 years.
Yeah.
So we could only bottle our first expression in 2012. So as far as my experience goes, I joined John Distilleries. I'm there from the inception. I joined John Distilleries in 1993. I started working as an intern. I started working under a couple of blenders. Then in 1999, I got a chance to work in a distillery. So that was for the first time I started working at a distiller.
Yeah.
So the distillation fascinated me. I continued my work at the distillery and after couple of years, I became the main in charge of the distillery.
Right. And was that working with continuous stills to begin with?
Yes, in India, most of the distilleries are continuous distillations.
Yeah.
We have column distillation systems. Nowadays it is more advanced. We distill under vacuum. This allows the spirit to be more purified.
Yeah.
It becomes more neutral. And in a way, we produce good vodkas because it is pure. It is out of all the congeners. So in 2009, I started distilling single malt. Then I become the head distiller for Paul John.
Yeah.
That is my.
I can imagine setting up a distillery in India has its own challenges, especially when we're talking about pot stills and sort of the type of equipment that might not be used for continuous distillation. So, for a start, did you get the pot stills made in Scotland, like a lot of companies do, and get them shipped over? Or, how did the whole thing come about?
Okay, what many people don't know about Indian whiskey industry is, before Paul John and Amrut, we had 20 odd distilleries already making single malts.
Oh wow!
For some reason, they were unable to produce quality liquid.
Yeah.
They were unknown.
Yeah.
What was happening was they were producing single malts, but they were using the liquid for blending purposes. Many other distillers or bottlers, they used to buy the liquid for the blending purpose. the first time the Indian single malt came into picture when Amrut won the world's third best whiskey in 2010.
Yeah.
Until then, Indian single malt wasn't known for many people. So we have a history of making whiskies in India. As far as my experience goes, I did not have any prior experience before 2009. So me and Mr. Paul, we went to Scotland for some few months, few days, to look around and understand how the whiskey is made there, because we wanted to make proper whiskey. What we realized is, after coming back, we had to start everything from scratch, because not only the environment was different, even the ingredient that we were going to use was different.
Okay.
The equipment we supposed to buy would have been different.
Yeah.
So everything was different. So we had to again go back to do our homework. So I went to a couple of other distilleries and just to see what wrong things they were doing.
Yeah.
So I found out a couple of things they were not doing right, that the Scottish people were doing right.
That's quite fascinating. Yeah.
So I took few things from others, and I started improvising the things. This is where we are today after 13 years.
And I've seen pictures of the distillery, and it looks kind of very authentic, sort of Indian, almost like an old sort of Victorian era sort of building. Was it built from scratch and essentially mimicking that style? Is that the idea behind it? Or?
Yes, yeah. Goa was a Portuguese colony.
Yeah.
We have Portuguese history in Goa. India was liberated in 1947, but until 1961, still Goa was under Portuguese rule.
I didn't know that. Yeah. Wow.
So, in a way, we built the entire distillery. If you see the architecture, it's Indo-Portuguese architecture.
Yeah.
It's a fusion of both Indian and Portuguese architecture. If you see the equipments, including pot stills, everything is made in India.
Wow.
Yeah, we have good coppersmiths in India.
Yeah.
Each and everything was bought and made in India.
Yeah, the pot stills look amazing. Actually, they're in very interesting looking shape. The wash still is sort of, I suppose you could say, it's onion shaped. Would that be the best way to describe it?
Absolutely. What many of the distilleries prior to us was doing is they were mimicking the design of the pot stills that they had seen, or the designs are from some of the Scottish distillers.
Yeah.
So what they did not realize is they cannot make, for example, if my boss is a huge fan of Glenmorangie.
Yeah.
Okay, but we cannot make Glenmorangie in Goa.
Yeah. I would say everything is different.
So
the climate, the
what
water.
I decided, I started working according to the environment condition.
Mm-hmm.
See, once it is distilled, it has to be matured.
Yeah.
So what are the environment conditions? The Goa is hot, it is humid. Whiskey matures differently there.
Yeah.
So I had to design everything as according to the environment condition. So I had to get elegant, light, easy drinkable liquid.
Yeah.
I cannot produce heavy new make spirit and start maturing it.
Yeah.
So small improvisation we tried to do, and the pot still design was done by us. If you see the older pot stills, you see a couple of patches on that. Because we tried to change the profile of the pot still for almost 6 months.
Yeah.
Until we got it right.
Yeah. Anyone listening who wants to check it out, go to the Paul John website, and they're sort of great looking pot stills. You mentioned that the ingredients are are slightly different in India. And your barley comes from the north of India, is that right? Did you say Rajasthan?
Yes. We use Indian 6-row grain.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that India does not grow 2-row.
Yeah.
We grow both type of grain.
Yeah.
Since the quality of 6-row is better than 2-row.
Okay.
We use 6-row grain.
Yeah, because in Scotland it's the reverse.
It's reverse.
In Ireland it's the reverse. Yeah.
Because again, the most of the grain is grown on the northern part of India.
Yeah.
Especially on the foothills of Himalayas.
Yeah.
Where the weather is more conducive to grow barley. To grow barley, during the sowing it has to be cold. You need a lot of water. During the summer it has to be hot and dry. So the northern part is more conducive for this.
Yeah.
And none of the distilleries have got their own malting facility. We all depend on private malting companies. So most of the malting companies are situated around Delhi.
Okay, yeah. In the north
so
as well.
what they do is they collect the grain from surrounding areas and they do the malting and send it to different distilleries.
Yeah.
So our grain comes from a place called Rajasthan.
Yeah.
This is again on the northern part of India. So we source our 100% barley from Rajasthan.
Yeah. And when it comes to actually making the whiskey, I gather the actual profile of that grain must be different to what's grown in Scotland as 2-row barley. You'd have a higher protein content, would you?
Comparatively, 6-row is slightly different than 2-row.
Yeah.
So talking about the physical appearance, the 6-row is smaller than the 2-row. Mm-hmm. This makes the husk to grain ratio more, means the husk is higher than the grain.
Yeah.
So when you talk about higher amount of husk contains tannins. So tannin also imparts certain flavors.
Yeah.
This makes the liquid more grainier in character.
Okay. Yeah.
Another main difference is the Indian grain or the 6-row contains more protein, so and less of carbohydrate. Yeah. This makes the yield, comparatively we get lesser yield.
Yeah.
To the 2-row.
Yeah.
These are the two main differences. Since you have lesser carbohydrate, the overall ABV of new make spirit is not more than 63 to 64%.
Yeah.
So we need not water it down before we fill the casks.
Okay, so it goes straight into the barrel.
For example, some of the distillers in Scotland or in other cooler regions where they use 2-row, their ABV goes up to 68%, wherein they have to dilute to bring the ABV down to 65 or below that, before it goes inside the cask. Even
more so in Ireland, actually, where you're looking at triple distillation.
Triple distillation, yes.
So that's very interesting. I'd say the fermentations and the mashing and all those processes are slightly different.
As you know, the single malt is mix of the science and art.
Yeah.
The mashing is more of a science. I think we adopt the same traditional method. We have Marston in order, to process 2 tons per batch.
Yeah.
We use 6-row grain again. Our grist ratio is it's a very standard one. We use 10, 20 and 70. Then once the mashing is done, we collect around 12,000 liters of sweet wort. Mm-hmm. Then it is taken into the wash wax or the fermenters. We have steel fermenters and we use dry yeast.
Yeah.
Before the pitching, we do the inoculation in order to propagate it. We propagate it and we add it. Fermentation happens at higher temperature because
of course,
the entire primary fermentation completes in 60 hours time. Fermentation happens again at in between 27 to 30 degrees.
Yeah.
So I would say it's quite rapid. So what we are doing is, we are trying to produce more esters.
Yeah.
So higher ester, more
Softer
fruitier
flavor, yeah.
more fruitier the wash becomes. So once the primary fermentation is completed, we allow the wash to rest for a couple of more hours, 10 to 15 hours. So during this period, the wash gets infected because you have natural bacteria in the atmosphere.
Yeah.
So bacteria will take over the wash, and some more good congeners will develop.
Yeah.
So in a way we make create more complexity. Then once that is over, we take the entire wash for distillation. We have 4 pot stills. We do double distillation.
Yeah.
So 12,000 goes into wash still. Then the distillation starts. We collect close to 3,500 liters of low wines, having 17% alcohol.
Yeah.
So that's 3,500 liters plus the previous batch, the faints of 2,500 liters. Together 6,000 liters goes to second distillation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, we don't go by the time and the strength, because in India we are allowed to keep the spirit safe open.
I heard that. Yeah, I think someone mentions that on your website.
Each and every batch is. We do the sensory and then do the cuts.
Okay.
So heads and tails are separated. Then the heart is taken into a big receiver.
Yeah.
So as I said, we get ABV of 63.5. So we collect a couple of batches in order to make it uniform. We mix it properly. Then the entire quantity goes inside the cask.
Yeah. Let's talk a bit about the range. How many is that? 6 core range whiskies? I think that's what we're tasting tonight. Anyway.
Before I could speak about the expressions, I want to talk about the maturation.
Of course, yeah.
So as I said, initially India is hot and humid. Whiskey matures differently there.
Yeah.
So in order to make sure our whiskies doesn't become too woodier, we selected ex-bourbon casks to start with.
Okay.
So today we have close to 25,000 casks. Out of 25,000, 90% of the inventory is ex-bourbon. Then the rest is alternative casks such as virgin oak, Spanish wine casks, Portuguese wine casks.
Yeah.
Again, we produce 2 different types of liquids. One is peated, the other one is non-peated. You know that, right? So out of these 2 liquids, we create different expressions because we don't have age statement.
Yeah.
India is, hot, and 1 year of extraction is equivalent to 4 years of extraction in the colder regions.
I know. It amazes
so we always
me
say one year in India is equivalent to 4 years in Scotland.
It amazes me that no one in Ireland or Scotland are looking at heated warehouses, to accelerate aging.
So it's. So we create different expressions.
Yeah.
So we have close to 5 different categories. We have something called entry level. It's a young whiskey. It's just 3 years old, chill filtered, bottled at 40%. It's called Nirvana. So Nirvana is for those who are in transition from blended whiskies to single malt.
Okay, so it's an introduction.
India is one of the leading alcohol consuming country in the world. Most of the people consume whiskey. Out of that, 80% I would say is blended whiskies.
Yeah.
There are many reasons for this. One of the main reason is awareness.
Yeah.
Correct. So many people think single malt is expensive, and also they think it is more potent or much stronger. What they don't realize is most of the blended whiskies are chill filtered and bottled at 40%, whereas single malt normally you find it above 46%.
Yeah.
Correct. So they don't look at the label. So always they think the blended whiskies are more softer,
and
more palatable.
Would most people be drinking with ice in India, given the sort of climate?
Yeah, again, as said, I mean, I wouldn't. I think there is no right way or wrong way to consume whiskey.
Yeah.
India is hot, so people prefer to have tall drinks.
Yeah.
People use ginger ale. People use soda. People use water or ice. But now the culture is changing.
Yeah.
Mainly because of the social media.
Yeah.
People are getting to know about the other products, how people drink. People are traveling now, so they see how other people are consuming alcohol, so they're learning. So yeah, as I said, Nirvana is for those who are in transition from single malt to blended, from blended whiskey to single malt. Then we have something called flagships. In flagships we have 3 different expressions: brilliance, edited, and bold. Brilliance is unpeated. Editor is with a hint of peat, whereas bold is completely peated.
Okay.
All are bottled above 46%.
Yeah.
That means these are non-chill filtered whiskies.
Okay.
Ages in between 5 to 6 years. All are from ex-bourbon casks. Then comes select cask ranges. In select casks we have 2 each from ex-bourbon, Spanish wine, and Portuguese wine casks.
Oh, great. Yeah.
Yeah, but all are bottled above 48%.
Yeah.
These are cherry-picked casks. We don't vat more than 50 casks in a year.
Okay. Yeah.
Then we have some of these special releases. The first of these special release is a Zodiac series. We are releasing the series of Indian Zodiac series. The first one was Kanya, that is Virgo in English.
Okay, right.
Was from the ex-bourbon cask,
Yeah.
a 7-year-old whiskey that had won the best Asian whiskey in 2018. Then came Mithuna. Mithuna is for Gemini. It's called as Gemini because the whiskey was initially matured in virgin oak for 4 years.
Yeah.
Later transferred into ex-bourbon cask for 2 years.
Yeah.
And this went on to become the 3rd best whiskey in the world in 2021.
Wow.
So the 3rd one is in the line now. After that, we started a tradition of releasing a small batch during Christmas.
Oh yes.
This tradition started in 2018. So normally Christmas edition has whiskies at least from 3 different types of casks.
Yeah.
So we started in 2018. 2021 is already it's in the market. These are the main core ranges.
Yeah. And would you have a favorite amongst that range, or one that you're particularly proud of?
In a way, we made whiskeys for all the palate.
Yeah.
All the whiskeys are different. Personally speaking, I like whiskeys from ex-bourbon casks.
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan of something called Classic. It's one of the select casks from ex-bourbon. I love cask strength whiskies. So it is bottled at 55. So I always prefer Classic over other expressions.
Yeah. It's amazing how people's tastes change over time. And I love speaking to people about how their tastes in whiskey change, because mine changes all the time. At the moment, I'm into bourbon cask matured whiskies as well, but I've gone through the whole phase of loving the big peat monsters, and then loving what you'd call the sherry bombs, and then going back to what you'd sort of call the basics of whiskey, which is bourbon cask maturation, where you can really taste the spirit quality above all,
You're right. I mean, I think it's very difficult to create good quality unpeated whiskey.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very difficult to hide the flaws when
exactly.
it is,
yeah.
When it is ex-bourbon cask.
Yeah.
For example, peated or sherry finish. A couple of flaws are masked. People will not know.
There are some tricks that distillers use, certain types of cask. Yeah.
So I wouldn't say all are doing this, but it is possible.
Yeah.
But otherwise, if you want to enjoy the true maltiness of a single malt, I think it has to be from ex-bourbon cask.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Moving on to the peated whiskies, how would you describe them in terms of maybe like a Scottish context? For people who haven't tried them, who might want to taste the sort of peated expressions, is there a sort of comparable distillery in Scotland that you could sort of say that sort of level of smokiness?
Yeah, I mean, it's strange because in India we don't have peat.
Yeah.
Okay, the only place from where we could get peat is from Scotland.
Yeah.
So initially we started sourcing our peat from Islay. Out of Islay peat we created something called Bold. Bold is 100% peated whiskey. Later, it became difficult to get peat from Scotland. From Islay.
Yeah.
Instead of Islay, we started sourcing from Highland.
Okay.
Wherein the profile become entirely different.
Yeah.
Islay peat, comparatively, is more softer and less intense compared to Islay malt.
Yeah.
So today, if you taste our whiskies, whether it is peated Select Cask or Bold, it is completely different than the Islay malt. Though the peat is from Scotland, our whiskies taste differently.
Yeah.
There are two reasons for this. One is the region. The second one is the time it is taken to reach India.
Yes. Yeah.
By the time
different
it reaches India, it is
content.
almost 3 months, and most of the harsher phenols are lost.
Yeah.
So in a way, it is allowing us to create different type of peated whiskey.
Yeah.
It is more approachable, I would say.
Okay.
Because it is less intense, it is less on your face.
Yeah.
Islay malt has its own unique characteristics.
Mm-hmm.
I think, if a person start liking peated whiskies, I don't think you would ever stop drinking peated whiskies.
Yeah.
But I've been traveling across the world doing whiskey tastings, but out of 100, 80 people prefer non-peated, only 20 people prefer peated whiskies.
Yeah, it's interesting that, isn't it? Yeah. And you get people in Ireland who just refuse to taste Scottish whiskey, saying it's all smoky. It's always a challenge to say, actually, no, most Scottish whiskey isn't smoky. It's just the famous ones are. So yeah, it's always a challenge to get people.
Yeah, it is interesting because a couple of days ago we were at Tullamore.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you see, the entire distillery is built inside the bog.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Yet they don't use peat.
Yeah.
So it is so interesting. So in India we struggle to get peat, wherein here
there's an abundance of peat in Ireland.
Peat and they don't use
but
it.
that is changing, and there are some people making excellent peated whiskey now in Ireland.
Yeah, I understand.
While we're talking about Ireland, it's no secret that Sazerac are involved in Paul John as an operation, but recently, last year, Sazerac also took a stake in Lochgill Distillery, and I gather you were visiting there recently.
Actually, we were there a couple of days ago. I think I've been to Ireland before.
Yeah.
But I think Sligo or Lochgill is one of the most beautiful part of Ireland.
Yeah.
And I got the opportunity to go and visit the distillery. It is beautiful. They have very good facility.
Yeah.
I got a chance to taste some of the liquid from from the distillery.
Great.
It is so clean. It is so fruity. I love it.
Would you describe it as a classic Irish kind of style?
Definitely, yes. I mean, especially some of the whiskies matured in, I think, cider wood, and Marsala cask was amazing.
I love Marsala for whiskey. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very interesting distillery, and they have a huge amount of space up there, don't they? They're
correct.
Some very big buildings.
Yeah. Both Oliver and Helen, they are fantastic people, very enthusiastic. Very. So they are doing best to create some of the world class whiskies.
Yeah.
I think in a few months' time, you would definitely get to taste some of the whiskies produced out of Lochel.
Yeah. So watch this space. Yeah. That's very interesting. Yeah, we look forward to trying them. It's always exciting to see these new distilleries come of age and to taste their first whiskies.
So the entire whiskey industry itself is very fascinating.
Yeah,
this is one of the reasons I got into whiskey making.
Moving so fast in Ireland at the moment, it's crazy.
It's not only in Ireland. If you see, since the time we launched our single malts, a couple of more guys have already released their single malts.
Yeah.
So I think over a period of time, you would see another at least 5 different labels coming out of India. I think. So surely, you will have Indian categories soon.
Yeah. And I mean, going back to India, the single malt market, I think you kind of hinted that it's still really taking off in India, with most people drinking blends. In terms of where you sell your whiskey, is it predominantly in India, or are you selling more in Europe and beyond?
Yeah, different producers use different strategies.
Yeah.
For example, Paul John, in 2012, actually our whiskies were released in England and Scotland.
Yeah.
We had our release in London and Edinburgh. Until 2015, our whiskies were not available in India.
Okay.
Yeah, so only after 2015 we made our whiskies available for Indian market. But other distillers, they straight away they have released their single malts in India and abroad also. So yeah, I mean today, there is a demand for Indian single malts within India.
Yeah.
As you know, we have large population. People, the buying capacity has increased.
Yeah.
So they don't. They're not afraid to spend their money on expensive whiskies.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think this is the right time for others to release their single malts as well.
Sure.
Today we have close to 5 distilleries selling their single malts in India.
Yeah. And the production from Paul John, is that all single malt, all bottled as single malt? It doesn't go into any of the Paul John company blends?
No, yeah. Out of, say, we produce close to 1.5 million liters annually,
Yeah.
So first, second and third fills goes for Paul John single malts.
Yeah.
Anything above third fill goes for our premium blended whiskies.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, we have a couple of premium blended whiskies. These whiskies are sold in Europe and Japan, and also in India.
Yeah.
So, yes, it's not only for Paul John single malts.
Yeah. So classic style distillery as you'd find in Scotland, I suppose. Yeah. What does the future hold? Is the distillery working? I assume it's at full capacity, and
yes, we work 24/7, 365 days. Unfortunately, we have run out of liquid, so we started allocating now.
Okay.
Already we have started the expansion work. So we are adding 4 more pot stills in order to double the capacity.
Yeah.
So from 2024, we would be producing close to 3 million liters every year.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's a big success story then, for that such a small sort of timeline.
Yes, for I would say 13 to 15 years is a long time, because everyday whiskey changes in India.
Yeah.
It's so quick, so you don't have much time to think.
Yeah.
Our whiskies are well received across the world.
Absolutely.
Today we are present in 48 different countries.
Yeah.
And duty free travel retails. And also, we have a great opportunity to expand the market, but unfortunately, we don't have enough liquid. So we have to wait for another couple of years before we think of expanding.
Yeah. And you mentioned awards there. The distillery has won so many awards. It's unbelievable. I think is it 300 international awards at this stage?
Yes, I mean till date we have won more than 300 international awards.
That's incredible.
Awards are great.
Yeah.
But for me as a maker, I think when somebody comes and appreciates and tells that he liked our whiskies, I think that is a much bigger reward.
Oh yeah, It must give you a bit of a confidence boost, though.
Yes. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, congratulations on those awards, and thanks for coming to Ireland and for spreading the love about Paul John single malts. I'm very much looking forward to trying some of them tonight.
Thank you very much.
Michael D'Souza, thank you for joining me on the Celtic Whiskey Pod.
Thank you for inviting me.
Cheers.
Thank you.
You're listening to the Celtic Whiskey Pod, the home of unchill filtered conversation.
With the risk of sounding like a broken record, I have to say that Paul John Distillery makes some excellent whiskey, so get out there and buy a bottle. It was a pleasure to talk to Michael about the whiskies and the distillery. Look out for them on the International Whiskey Awards, where they all seem to do well. Many thanks to Michael, to Steve Harbort and High Spirits, and also to the Drury Buildings for hosting us for the interview. I hope you liked this episode of the Celtic Whiskey Pod. If you did, then why not spread the word by posting about it on your social media. I'll be back, of course, with another episode soon. Until then, sláinte and goodbye.